I just ordered a cappuccino in the very same coffee shop where the American Revolution started. I'm not kidding. Most people would say that the American Revolution began in April 19th, 1775 in Massachusetts, at Lexington and Concord, when the first shots were fired by the British against the American colonials. But that is not where the American Revolution began. It began here in Philadelphia, in this London coffee house, when a small group of patriots, they hatched a plot to overturn the notorious Tea Act, which had been imposed upon them earlier in the year in 1773. These men produced a document containing 8 angry resolutions against the English crown, and they read it out loud to a cheering throng of onlookers assembled outside the State House. The effect of the tax, they declared, would be to render assemblies useless and to introduce arbitrary government and slavery. One of the authors of this incendiary document was a Philadelphia doctor who found himself at the center of the growing rift between Great Britain and the American colonies. I'm Joseph Loconte, an author and historian, and I want to know more about the most important founding father that most Americans have never heard of, Dr. Benjamin Rush. A native son of Philadelphia, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, a surgeon in Washington's Continental Army, a player in the Continental Congress, a fervent abolitionist, and a man of faith. It is hard to name a colonial leader who more fully embodied the political and religious ideals of the American Revolution. Rush's coffeehouse intrigue demands our attention because his words help to instigate the patriotic hooliganism of Samuel Adams and the Sons of Liberty in Boston. Yes, I'm talking about the Boston Tea Party of December 1773, when the colonists boarded British ships filled with tea and tossed it in the water. This iconic act of rebellion owes a debt to those troublemakers in Philadelphia. Benjamin Rush described that moment to his friend John Adams. The flame kindled on that day soon extended to Boston and gradually spread throughout the whole continent. I think the doctor got it exactly right. By the summer of 1774, a sweltering hot Philadelphia is playing host to the first ever Continental Congress. They're meeting right here in Carpenter's Hall. And guess who's coming to this political party? Among them are Patrick Henry, Samuel Adams, his cousin John, and a decorated military leader named George Washington. After meeting Washington for the first time, Rush said that you'd recognize him as a general out of a crowd of 10,000 people, and that there wasn't a king in Europe who wouldn't look like a valet in comparison. While the Congress is still in session, Rush hosts a dinner at his home for the delegates. He begins to build a friendship with John Adams and his wife, Abigail. The doctor is being pulled into the inner circle of colonial leadership at the very moment when resentment against Great Britain is hitting a fever pitch. Before the Continental Congress concludes its business in October of 1774, it adopts a Declaration of Colonial Rights, rights that its signatories claim have been treated with contempt by the British government. This language about natural rights, which will also appear in the Declaration of Independence, is lifted from the writings of that English philosopher, John Locke. Probably every colonial leader, including Benjamin Rush, had studied Locke's political philosophy as part of their classical Christian education. Among these natural rights, they say, are life, liberty, and property. The violation of these rights is called dangerous and destructive of the concept of self-government.
Joe, is this what you were signing up for when you became a YouTube star?
I sign up for whatever you guys tell me to do, I do. I love it when beer is part of the actual filming schedule. It makes it into the schedule. We call this field research.
Oh, there's our giraffes. When the Congress adjourns, they throw a banquet in the City Tavern, which is one of their favorite watering holes. And they invite some of the local Philadelphians who had taken care of them during their stay, and they invite Dr. Benjamin Rush. Rush said he found himself deeply moved by one of the toasts from the governor of Rhode Island. May the fire which has been recently kindled upon the altar of liberty in America enlighten all nations of the earth into a knowledge of their rights. Well, there are problems at the altar of liberty, aren't there? Since a huge number of Americans are being denied their basic rights to life, liberty, and property. The enslaved black population. I'm going to talk to my friend, the Reverend Charles Howard, about all this. Charles, it is terrific to see you again, my friend. It's been much, much too long. There's this coffeehouse intrigue that Benjamin Rush is involved in, and they're drawing up a list of particulars complaints against the British Crown.
The London Coffee House is right by the water. It's a waterway that ultimately can go to the Atlantic Ocean. And so individuals carrying a lot of different cargo, coming up from Charleston to Baltimore to Philadelphia, can make stops, dropping off things they've picked up along the way.
Right.
Be it cotton, tobacco, and human beings as well.
And human beings. Human cargo.
Human cargo. And then people would bid on them, would auction them, and take them away to forced slavery.
Yes.
And again, this tension of thinking about freedom and liberty on the inside of the coffee house, planning for a way that we can all be equal, where we don't have a king, anyone has an opportunity for freedom, and taking 10 steps out the door and dehumanizing and taking away the freedom of a fellow human being.
At about the same time as his coffeehouse intrigue, Rush published a pamphlet demolishing the rationalizations for slavery. Rush rejects the assumption that Africans are an inferior race. He cites evidence of their ingenuity and humanity as proof that they're equal to the Europeans. Addressing the city's clergy, Rush denounces them for using the Bible to sanctify their crimes against humanity. Here's how he put it in his essay. In vain will you command your flocks to offer up the incense of faith and charity, while they continue to mingle the blood and sweat of Negro slaves with their sacrifices. Rush calls for an end to the slave trade and the gradual abolition of slavery in the colonies. Now think about it. Nearly a century before Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, a leader in the American Revolution defends the most radical vision of human equality on the world stage. Now, for a young physician trying to establish himself in the social scene in Philadelphia, this is a gutsy move. A quarter of all the households in Philadelphia have slaves. Some of these slave owners, including Benjamin Franklin and John Dickinson, these are important people in Rush's professional life. It doesn't matter. Future generations, he says, will be at a loss at which to condemn most, our folly or our guilt in abetting this great violation against the laws of nature and religion.
People talked about being a product of one's time. It was sadly a very normalized thing at that moment where some people are slaves, some people are rich and powerful, some people are not.
Yes.
I think the other thing, though, to name is not everyone was a product of their time.
Yes, that's right.
There were those who presented a very different kind of witness.
If Rush hoped to start a national debate about slavery, it's not going to happen. On April 24th, 1775, the shocking news arrives in Philadelphia. Nearly 1,000 British soldiers had opened fire on 2 colonial outposts in Massachusetts, the battles of Lexington and Concord. For Benjamin Rush and many other colonial Americans, the moment of decision has arrived. I now resolve to bear my share of the duties and the burdens of the coming revolution, he wrote. The first gun that was fired at an American, it cut the cords that had tied the 2 countries together. Love it. Thank you.
No problem.
Oh, lovely in here. All right. Well, we're going to be meeting Dr. Scott Stevenson.
Nice to see you.
Scott, this is Joe Loconte.
Dr. Stevens, really good to meet you. Call me
Scott,
Joe.
please, Scott.
Okay,
Yeah,
great, great. Thanks for taking the time, Scott.
Oh,
we
of
really
course.
appreciate
Yeah,
it. Brilliant.
So we're literally 2 blocks from Independence Hall. So right here in the center of the headquarters of the American Revolution. When you think about that transformation that Dr. Rush and the revolutionary generation had to go through, most people of his background considered themselves part of the greatest empire since the ancient world.
That's right, with incredible freedoms.
Incredible freedoms, right. It goes back to Magna Carta, this idea that you cannot be deprived of your property without your consent. That consent of the governed is given through your elected representatives. This is where taxation without representation comes from. When the British Parliament imposes the Stamp Act, that's the first time colonial Americans feel like they're being directly taxed by people they are not casting a vote for.
They got no voice. They got no realistic voice in that parliament, right?
It's 10 years from the Stamp Act to the battles of Lexington and Concord. So they got to go on a journey.
It's a slow-burning fuse. During the night, bells ring throughout Philadelphia to signal the news of the tragic events in Massachusetts. 8,000 people gather the next day outside the State House and pledge to defend the colonies. 2 weeks later, the Second Continental Congress arrives in Philadelphia. The delegates elect George Washington as the supreme commander of the American military, a ragtag army that barely existed. A few days later, a dinner is held in Washington's honor at a tavern somewhere around here on the west bank of the Schuylkill River just outside the city. Benjamin Rush is invited to join this intimate gathering. Well, someone makes a toast to Washington as commander-in-chief of the American armies. Today, we'd probably call that treason.
He's always so good about describing the mood of the moment. You know, sometimes this 18th century writing can kind of be very emotionless in a way, and he's very good at painting character sketches in that moment, and you feel the weight of that moment.
This scene, so unexpected, was a solemn one, says Rush. A silence followed it, as if every heart was penetrated with the awful but great events which were to follow the use of the sword of liberty, which had just been put into General Washington's hands by the unanimous voice of this country. What Benjamin Rush had written about when he called for the abolition of slavery now seems deeply relevant to the American struggle for independence. The plant of liberty is of so tender a nature that it cannot thrive long in the neighborhood of slavery, he wrote. Remember, the eyes of all Europe are fixed upon you to preserve an asylum for freedom in this country after the last pillars of it are fallen in every other quarter of the globe. Well, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss more episodes of the Benjamin Rush series. He was a truly remarkable colonial leader. And by the way, this series would be impossible without the generous support from my friends at Founding Forward. So have a quick look and learn about the incredibly important work they're doing to renew the American story. If the American founders agreed on one thing, it was this: their revolution for freedom would fail without citizens who understood the principles upon which it was built. And that's the mission of Founding Forward: to educate students, teachers, and the broader community about the meaning of the Declaration of the Constitution and to renew the foundation for responsible citizenship. This experience isn't confined to the classroom. The lessons of America's democratic journey come alive when you stand in the places where history happened. At Valley Forge, where the American cause was held together through courage and sacrifice. In Philadelphia, where a band of revolutionaries pledged their lives for the cause of freedom and gave the world the most durable constitution in history. This is how you teach the next generation about the rights and the obligations of citizenship, by immersing them in the American story.
As a teacher, I believe in experiential learning. I loved getting to go to the place that we spoke about.
It helped me see the best version of myself and strive to become it.
These Founding Forward programs really allow you to gain the knowledge that you need to be a more active citizen in our democracy.
Our republic depends on citizens like this. Citizens who understand and embrace the American story and want to shape its future.